This video is sponsored by Stack Audio, manufacturers of the Orva speaker and equipment isolation feet used by a British audiophile. For more information about these and other products, please click the link in the description. It's not so easy to get to listen to hi-fi these days. Dealers are on the decline. I know some people that have to travel a day just to get to their nearest one, and in some parts of the world it's even worse than that. If possible, get yourself to a show, chat to the designers, cast your eyes and ears on lots of products to help narrow down the choices. It's a great social event, but you can't really tell how something sounds in a noisy show environment. So what do you do? Well, there are companies like Buchardt Audio that sell direct and will let you trial their products at home. Buchardt even cover the cost of return shipping should you decide to return their product, with a reasonable restocking charge. As you move into more resolving systems, how the speakers interact with your room and the synergy between the components becomes more critical. All-in-one systems, powered speakers and active speakers cut down the amount of decisions you have to make, but there's another way you can allow the professionals to make it easier for you. Some manufacturers produce speakers under one brand name and amplifiers under another, like Wharfedale and Audiolab. Name and Focal are another example. There's no guarantee that the sound will be to your liking, but at least you know they were designed to work together. I recently reviewed the Monitor Audio Gold 100 6th generation speakers and was very impressed with the stunning amounts of detail they were able to reproduce. The same people produce amplifiers under the Roksan brand, so I requested a review sample of the new Caspian 4th generation. That's their flagship integrated amp. I was curious to learn how this company that produces some of the finest speakers I've heard for the money does with amplifiers. It may be the ideal partner for the Gold 100s as well. The Roksan Caspian 4G retails for £3,000 in the UK. A version incorporating a BlueOS streaming module is available for £4,000, but I elected for the straight amplifier. A black finish and a silver finish that looks more like titanium is available. I really like the build and aesthetics. The casework is constructed from thick extruded aluminium with no visible fixings. Both the solitary front control dial and heat sinks are beautifully machined. The styling has the charm of a mid-20th century modernist building with clean fluid lines and minimal ornamentation, or at least an interpretation of what a sci-fi future would be like from that period. So somehow the Caspian manages to be both modern and retro at the same time. There's just the one knob pressed to take the unit out of standby. Rotating the dial, which is gloriously smooth and resistive, adjusts the volume. The level is displayed both numerically on the left and by a series of orange LEDs on the right. Pressing and holding down the dial facilitates input selection. There's a moving magnet phono stage, 3 analog inputs, 4 digital inputs and a Bluetooth connection. The supplied remote control is designed to work with other Roksan products, but I can't help feeling disappointed that it doesn't maintain the simple design language of the amplifier. On the rear, speaker terminals are located at the extremities with analog connections to the left, the moving magnet phono, 2 single-ended RCA and 1 balanced XLR inputs run along the top. Below are preamplifier outputs. It's nice to see XLR as well as 2 RCA pre-outs provided. Next to the trigger connections for system control are basic digital inputs to the right, 2 coaxial and 2 optical TOS links restricting bandwidth to a maximum of 192 kHz and 24 bits. At this price I'd have liked to have seen an asynchronous USB input, but there's plenty to admire on the inside. Let me take you around the internals of the Roksan Caspian 4th generation amplifier, starting with a large 600 VA toroidal transformer from Norwegian company Atoll. That's a good quality part, so happy to see that. You can make out the 4 main filter caps there as well, but there's actually 4 filter caps per side in the power supply, 2 on the main board and 2 mounted to the power amplifier modules, which I'll get to in a second. The big ones are 10,000 microfarads and the smaller ones are 8,200, so a total of 36,400 microfarads per side, which is very healthy. It's exactly the same on the other side. And they're from a mid-tier manufacturer, TDK Electronics, EPCOS caps, nothing to complain about there. Hopefully you can make out the power amplifier module and the components on it, mounted vertically. Lots of tiny surface mount components, which is a bit of a shame. I like to see through-hole components, the type that you solder onto a board, the larger devices that handle heat and power better. The heat sinks themselves are beautifully machined, and between the board and the heat sinks are the output devices, which you can't see because there's a guard that runs across the top. But there's 6 of them per side, which again is very generous. They are Toshiba NPN and PNP devices in this push-pull amplifier, bipolar junction transistors, and it's the power supply and these output devices that help this amplifier almost double its output. It's rated at 105 watts into 8 ohms and 200 watts into 4 ohms. Now the main board is actually hidden behind a series of boards mounted on top, and this guard, which I presume is shielding for the AC inlet. So let me just switch to some press coverage where I can show you a little bit more details of the main board. The thing to note on the preamplifier is that it's balanced as well as the DAC that has a balanced architecture as well, and that helps to keep the noise down. The power amplifier modules are dual mono, they're not balanced. Having balanced power amplifier modules would raise the cost. Roksan call their DAC architecture Rapture. I don't know why, but it sounds cool. There's no op amps in the IV stage, that's the current to voltage conversion stage. Roksan believe that that improves the sound quality, and it's a dual mono design, so not only balanced but dual mono. They're running 2 Texas Instruments Burr Brown PCM1996 chips in a differential current conveyor topology to improve linearity. Now I won't get into the technicalities of that, it's just how the chips are connected, but it is fully balanced and dual mono. Back to me again. There are 2 other boards mounted above the main board. I think the middle board is for input switching because the inputs are mounted to it, the RCA inputs and the balanced XLR. And the top one has lots of ICs, so I would imagine that's for system control. Let me just zoom out again so you can see the overall architecture of what we have here. This 4th generation of the Roksan Caspian amplifier has a distinct personality. It's best described by 2 words, power and warmth. It's a bit like an iron fist in a velvet glove, and that'll be its appeal to some people, but also its shortcoming to others. For starters, the bass performance doesn't change at low, medium or high listening levels. You can crank this thing up without any fear of it losing composure. It's not the tightest bass that I've heard from an amplifier in this class, but it's delivered with authority and an appropriate sense of weight. I'd like a little bit more texture, for example, when a bow is being drawn across the strings of a bass or cello, but there's hardly any bleed through from the bass to the mid-range. It's this innate sense of power and control that separates the Caspian 4G from the very best amplifiers I've heard below £1,000. Even the excellent Audiolab 6000A Mark II can't hang on to rhythms or separate out instruments as well as the Roksan. But there's a pronounced coloration to the sound of the Caspian, and that's down to the mid-range. The lower mid-range is very full with a tendency to sound thick, whereas the upper mid-range is recessed back to the extent that even some edgy recordings can sound laid back. It's this ability to do the big stuff well and the little stuff not so well that makes it so different in character to my £1,950 Exposure 2510. The 2510 delivers more timbral insight, be it the breathiness of a singer, the purposeful distortion on an electric guitar, or the subtlety when someone's playing a legato string section, and that reminds me of this week's music suggestion. Getting in touch with my ethnic roots with my favourite Sufi singer, Abida Parveen, accompanied by one of the greatest sitar players of all time, the late Ustad Rais Khan. A lot of East meets West fusions fall flat on their face, but this is a marvel by 2 masters of their field. There's a link to the live Coke Studio performance of Mehr Sufihu in the description of this video, but it's also available on some streaming services. Back to the review, and how does this warm-sounding Roksan Caspian 4G amplifier compare to my reference tube amplifier? The Wilsonton R8 will set you back around £1,500, By the time you've upgraded tubes on the preamp to 6SL7s from Tungstall, the driving stage tubes to PS Vane's CV181T2 collection, and the KT88 power tubes from the same PS Vane collection. The R8 has this big, rich, muscular presentation, which I adore, but it's not laid back sounding, not unless you're running it with EL34 power tubes, which I'm not at the moment. It also produces more micro detail than the Caspian, producing a larger soundstage with better localization of performers within it. That's not a criticism of the Roksan, that's just what great tube amps do very well. Again, where the Caspian surpasses the R8 is in its ability to maintain composure at high volumes. The bass remains in control, the mid-range doesn't harden, retaining its relaxed nature. Easygoing, fluid and organic are all adjectives that can be used to describe the Roksan Caspian 4G sound, but dark isn't one of them. That would require for the treble to be rolled off, and it isn't. There's a decent amount of air to upper harmonics and expression to cymbal hits. My £3,250 Hegel H190 offers no greater authority over the speaker drivers than the Roksan. Despite having a higher power rating, I suspect the peak current capability is similar on both amplifiers. The Hegel is more detailed and neutral in tone, but it can sometimes be a victim of its own success. If you like a little bit more flavour to your sound, especially if you're trying to tone down some bright speakers, you'll probably prefer the Roksan. So how did it fare with the speakers I tried? I've talked plenty about the Roksan Caspian 4G's ability to play well at high listening levels, but it also plays very well at low listening levels. It's this consistency across its entire volume range, which is one of the key strengths of this amplifier. You don't have to worry about tweaking the knob to find the sweet spot. The built-in DAC is also very well suited to the task. The sound through the digital inputs is very similar to the analog ones. I was able to squeeze a bit more detail and better spatial presentation using my £2,100 Denafrips Pontus 15th, but I wouldn't be opting for external DACs if I owned this amplifier. It's clear that the Roksan has been voiced to sound good with monitor audio speakers. They generally offer very good resolution, but also have a tendency to sound bright. I've purposefully kept 2 sets of them here for this review. The innate nature of the £799 Silver 100 7Gs to sit on the cool side of the tonal spectrum is transformed when played through the Caspian 4G, gravitating to the warm side like a moth to a flame. A speaker normally exerts greater influence in overall sonic presentation, but here it's the characteristics of the amplifier that are more dominant. Unsurprisingly, there's excellent synergy between these two products from the same stable, despite the price disparity. You may think that the Gold 100 6Gs are a more natural partner, as they're the same price as the Caspian 4G at £3,000. There's definitely an improvement in fidelity over the silvers, but this amplifier holds these speakers back. The Gold 100 6Gs are so detailed and not as lean sounding as their junior sibling. They deserve an amplifier with less coloration and more resolution to truly shine. That's exactly what my exposure pre-monoblocks provide. I can't help but ponder that the Caspian has been developed to provide adequate power to control the larger floor-standing models in the silver range, whereas the £1,100 Atessa may be sufficient and certainly more price appropriate for the stand mounts. The coloration to the sound of this amplifier would urge me to stay away from warm-sounding speakers. Here's why. The slightly plump bass and recessed upper mid-range of the otherwise very capable Buchardt E50s when paired to the Roksan is one of the worst synergistic matches I've encountered on this channel. Dull, soft and lifeless. Thankfully, I had another pair of speakers here that turned out to be my favourite pairing, and they're not monitor audios. The Quad Revela ones are more resolving than the Silver 100 7Gs and significantly cheaper than the Gold 100 6Gs at £1,800. They have a bit of forwardness in the same upper mid-range region where the Caspian 4G holds back. It makes for a great pairing, ideal to get the best out of this Roksan amplifier, and it just goes to show you don't have to keep things in the family to get great synergy. You just have to have some understanding, the opportunity to try a few things out, and a good degree of luck. Right, time to pull things together. Don't be fooled by the slim, dainty looks. The Roksan Caspian 4G is a powerful, brawny amplifier that's heavily constructed, pretty on the outside, tough on the inside. Like Muhammad Ali, but without his ability to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, it's a little too heavy on its feet for that. If you're looking for an amplifier not to colour the sound, this is not the one for you. It has a warm, laid-back presentation and an ability to play loud with no loss of composure. The synergy with monitor audio speakers is excellent, but I'd expect it to pair well with plenty of speakers that sit on the neutral to bright side. Before I finish, there's a couple of other competitors I just want to briefly mention. The Cambridge Audio EXA100 and the Audiolab 9000A both offer similar levels of fidelity for £1,000 less, but neither are built as well or have the driving capability of the Caspian 4G. On that basis alone, it justifies the extra £1,000 outlay. The Roksan Caspian 4G gets a recommended from this channel. We've had a debate about synergy recently, so my question for today is different. What are the challenges you've faced auditioning gear in your home? Please let me know in the comment section. I'm sure you know what to do by now. If you want to support me here and what I do, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Check me out on Patreon. There's a couple of tiers you can access there if you think I can help you on your audiophile journey. Also check out the ABA Club on Patreon, which has some great ways to interact with me and fellow Patreons. But for today, for now, British Audiophile, signing off.